Meta. If you play games even casually, you have surely heard this word thrown around a lot. But what does meta actually mean? Well, meta is an acronym for Most Effective Tactic Available. And it's something that defines most gamers' playstyles these days. Makes sense, right? Play the game as effectively as possible to give yourself the greatest chance of winning. So what's the actual issue with meta, and how does it really ruin the experience of a game rather than enhance it? Well, from the moment a game releases, you can guarantee there are many people out there trying to find the most overpowered and easiest way to play the game. And how many times have you said or heard someone else say after years of playing a game, God, this game was so much better when it came out? And it's usually the case, because games are most enjoyable right after they release. And there's a number of reasons for this, but a big part of it is because of the meta not developing yet. People are just going into the game with an open mind, trying out different weapons, classes, characters, playstyles, whatever it is. People are playing the game in whatever way they find most enjoyable. But as the meta is discovered and people start to use it to gain an advantage over other players, those other players now feel forced to conform to the meta to even out the playing field. And again, how many times have you said or heard someone else say, God, this weapon, character, or class is so boring to play? All while playing exactly what you're claiming is boring, just because it's meta at the time. I have seen this personally so many times. I've played thousands of hours of both Apex Legends and Overwatch, and these are two games that were completely ruined in my eyes because of meta and meta slaves. But I'll use the finals as an example here, since it's the most recent shooter I've been playing and most likely the game that you're currently playing. If you look at how the game has changed even since the very first playtest, people went into the game with an open mind, excited to try all the different things the game has to offer, to find their own playstyle through what they enjoy. People in the community were mostly talking about what they loved about the game and how fun certain builds and classes were to play. Then, by the time the second and third betas had come around, the meta had already begun to shape itself. People were already complaining about certain classes and builds being overpowered and overused. You started seeing a lot of people playing the exact same build and the exact same playstyle, like a bunch of clones. Particularly in the open beta, the silenced pistol and stun gun were notoriously overpowered, and it was pretty much the only build you would see every light player running. Then we come around to full release and the devs have nerfed both the stun gun and the silenced pistol, and suddenly you don't see it anywhere near as often. They've all moved on to whatever the new, most overpowered, easiest way to play the game is. And that's just in the casual game mode that I've seen this firsthand. Not to mention the thousands of guides on the meta and the easiest way to play the finals. Why? Aren't games meant to be played for fun? Do you really need a guide to tell you exactly how to play a game? Now I understand I make guides on this channel, but the focus of my guides has always been to help players learn fun mechanics or maybe try out a new fun playstyle, like my recent aggressive sniper guide. The playstyle I teach in that video is by no means super effective or an overpowered playstyle, but it's just fun. At least for me, and I know a lot of other people would really enjoy it if they gave it a go. There's actually a comment that was left on that video saying, this, which basically he's saying it is fun, but it's kind of dog shit. And if you're good with the sniper, then you could be good with any of the other better, more meta weapons on light or medium. Now, don't get me wrong, I completely understand where people like this are coming from. Ultimately, if you're just playing the game in whatever way you find fun, if it's not effective, you're basically disadvantaging yourself, and you're likely going to find it more difficult to beat your opponent and therefore potentially have less fun in the end. But is it really worth just using a stronger weapon, even if you find it boring, just to win? What's the point of even playing the game at that point? Another great example is Overwatch. There was a point in Overwatch's lifetime where the meta was to play 3 tanks and 3 supports. It was known as the GOATS meta. And this meta existed for months on end and was by far the most boring point in Overwatch's history. It was extremely boring to watch and verse, and even more boring to play. Everyone in the community complained about how boring and stale the game had become at that point, including every professional player. Yet everyone continued to play it because they didn't really have a choice. The meta was so strong that if you didn't play it, you'd just get absolutely run over by your opponent and not really be able to have any fun at all. I specifically remember queuing into quick play casual matches and picking a hero that I enjoyed playing, such as McCree, a DPS, and immediately being flamed by my teammates and asked to switch to a meta hero just so we could get a win in a casual game. I even asked these people at the time why they were playing the GOATS meta in quick play, and they would mostly agree that it was extremely boring, but they basically just played that comp because that's what the pros were doing at the time and that's what everyone else was doing. And there are so many more examples just like this that I could give for Overwatch, Apex, and a bunch of other multiplayer games, but if I spoke about all of them, this video would be hours long, and I think you get the point. It's the same players that are conforming to the meta that are also complaining about how stale it makes the game and how unenjoyable it is to verse. And this happens even in single player or co-op games. Another thing that I have seen firsthand. An action-adventure game with a shitload of different weapons, skills, and spells that you can use, and people choose to look up the strongest build before they've even begun to experience the game. I remember my first time playing Skyrim when I was young. I loved the feeling of exploring the game and its mechanics and coming up with fun but still effective builds that suited my playstyle, and I got to that point through trial and error. Trying out all the different builds the game had to offer was an extremely fun and rewarding experience. Now, if I'd gone into the game with the knowledge that one build was extremely overpowered in comparison to the others, and had opted to play that build first, the game would have been much less challenging, much less enjoyable, and then the other builds ultimately would have been less fun to play. Meta essentially just limits your options in a game. Looking again at a game like Overwatch, you have 30 plus diverse characters to choose from, yet 95% of players are picking from the same 6 or 7 characters in every single match, just because that's what's strong at the time. So I think most of you get where I'm coming from when I say that the meta can harm your experience on a game. But what can we actually do about this? Well, developers do update their games and do balance changes that mix up the meta quite frequently. But that really doesn't solve the problem. A few days after a balance change comes out, a new meta's been discovered anyway and everyone will jump straight to it. Games have changed a lot over the years and they've gotten increasingly more competitive. Players are grinding for hours on end playing a boring as fuck meta to try get a bigger number next to their rank. And unless you're playing professionally, I just don't see the point in doing this. If you don't find the meta fun, don't play it. If not playing the meta then means you get absolutely fucking shit stomped and can't have fun, then maybe just stop playing that game. Find something new to play. Ultimately, it comes down to the player. You. I made this video to maybe try and encourage some people to stop conforming to the meta if you don't find it fun. Because I know so many players that do this these days. Instead of playing the most effective tactic available, let's play the most enjoyable tactic available. So many people are spending more time frustrated and annoyed when playing games than they are actually having fun. Maybe this video will change the mindset of some players, maybe it won't. Either way, I'd love to hear your opinions on this topic, and I appreciate you watching. Have a good one. Cheers.